This is a trackball. You've either never seen one or spotted on some audio nerd's desk. I've been using it daily for over a year, for everything from casual browsing to editing audio and video. But there's one thing I've never used it for: gaming. That changes today. Hi there, I'm John. Welcome to this channel where I share my opinions. I've always wanted to talk about peripherals, since I've collected a fair share of uncommon gears over the years. So today, let's start with this trackball. Trackballs have actually been around since the very beginning of computing. Over the decades, they've found appreciation mostly in industrial and professional environments, especially in audio and video production. They come in all kinds of form factors, depending on your preference. Some, like mine, have the ball in the center, others place the ball near your thumb, shaped more like a traditional mouse. The one I'm using is the Kensington Expert Mouse optical trackball. Yeah, ridiculous name, but it is what it is. It features a 55mm ball in the center, uses an optical sensor as the name suggests, and run at 400 dpi. Unfortunately, I couldn't find much more official info about its specs. All I could do was run an online pooling rate test which showed results between 90 and 120 Hz. That's probably not great for gaming, but it is exactly what I'm gonna do with it. Can I game? More specifically, play shooters on a trackball after 1 year of practice? Short answer, yes. But also no. I picked Doom: The Dark Ages for this challenge because somehow it's just the obvious option. Most people will tell you that Doom games are best played with a mouse and keyboard, simply because they demand high speed and precision. Personally, I'm mostly a controller player, as you've probably already guessed. I play most FPS games like Halo and Call of Duty with a controller, so it's not like I'd suddenly be a headshot machine with a mouse and keyboard anyway. But here's the thing, accuracy wasn't even my biggest issue. Surprisingly, I didn't have much trouble aiming in Doom: The Dark Ages. You start with the shotgun, which makes precise aiming less of a priority, and even when I switched to more precision-based weapons, I could still manage them. Because if you're into arena shooters, you already know that movement, especially strafing, is often more important than mouse tracking. The only time it really struggles is when I'm surrounded by a lot of enemies and need to turn quickly. It's kind of like trying to use a regular mouse in a palm-sized space, because to get precise control with a trackball, the cursor speed needs to be set fairly low. The trade-off is that I have to move my wrist back and forth multiple times just to spin around. But honestly, on normal difficulty, it's not a deal breaker. Where things get really frustrating was the button mapping. Switching weapon with the number key felt clunky, and pairing with the right mouse button, which on this trackball means using my pinky, was just plain awkward. If I were taking the game more seriously, I'd probably remap the parry button to my keyboard, but that would just shift the strength to my left hand, where my index finger is already handling movement, weapon switching, and now potentially parrying. At that point, I kinda wish I had some foot pedals under the desk to offload all that input. That said, the weapon switching issue has more to do with keyboard layout and muscle memory than the trackball itself. If you are a seasoned mouse and keyboard player, you probably won't run into the same problem. I have to say that Doom: The Dark Ages seems to be very forgiving in terms of the shooting, and that's the real reason why the experience is still manageable. But I doubt I really enjoy this change of direction. At first, I thought the new parrying mechanics was a cool idea, but the more I played, the more I realized I didn't like how it shifted the focus away from shooting and placed too much emphasis on parrying. And the lack of those signature glory kills from the previous games make the combat feel a bit less satisfying. I'll probably finish it off with my controller from now on, because using this trackball really doesn't make me enjoy this game that much at all. If I'm being completely honest, no, I still don't think I can play FPS game with this trackball, simply because how bad the right button feels and how much my wrist hurts. But if you can think of any game that I should challenge with this device, let me know in the comment section down below. By now you're probably wondering why I'm using this weird device when, if you look closely, you can clearly see a regular mouse sitting right there on my desk. The answer is simple: space. My desk is pretty cramped. Between my keyboard and this controller, there's barely enough room for my palm. To use a traditional mouse, I'd have to move the controller and maybe even the keyboard out of the way. The only time I reach for the mouse is when I'm casually playing StarCraft. Another reason is habit. Back in film school, I did a lot of audio mixing, and the studio consoles there only had trackballs, just like this one. I started using it to work more efficiently with those setups, so I could spend less time wrestling with controls and more time focused on the actual mixing. Over time, I got used to it. Now I'd say I'm just as efficient with a trackball as I am with a mouse in terms of daily use. Definitely not for gaming though. But is there any other benefit using a trackball at all? If you do a quick search on that, you will probably see ergonomics and accuracy mentioned a lot. So let's dive into those. Starting with ergonomics. I don't think a trackball is the ideal solution if you spend long hours using a pointing device. It actually requires quite a bit of wrist movement, especially in situations like when I was playing Doom. After a few hours of continuous use, my wrists start to feel sore, just like it would with a traditional mouse. So in that sense, it doesn't really solve the ergonomic problem at all. And that's not even getting into the trackballs designed to be controlled with your thumb. Considering how much we already overuse our thumb on smartphone and other devices, asking them to do extra work doesn't sound like the smartest move for long-term comfort. The only reason I can tolerate this setup is that I don't actually use a mouse all that much these days. Most of my work involves typing and some audio or video editing, which don't put much strain on my wrist. In my experience, the most ergonomic pointing devices are still vertical mice. They promote a more natural hand position and feel way more comfortable for those long work sessions. And what about accuracy? On paper, this trackball doesn't really fall behind a traditional mouse, but it's not exactly better either. So why some people claim it's more accurate? I think that comes down to two main factors. First, the ball is controlled using your fingertips, which gives you a bit more precision for fine movement, especially in tasks like adjusting color wheels in DaVinci Resolve or making small tweaks in audio plugins. Second, Kensington's software lets you slow down the pointer speed using modifier keys, giving you even more control when you need to be extra precise. But they don't really offer any benefit when doing time-critical tasks like gaming. There's also a major problem you need to deal with in a design like this, and it's called friction. Unlike a traditional mouse, you can't just fix it by swapping out a mouse pad. You're stuck with the physical resistance inside the device itself. If you take a closer look at the device with the ball removed, you will see how it works. The large ball rests on three tiny rollers inside the socket, and the optical sensor sits just underneath to track its movement. It's basically like one of those old school ball mice from the 90s, just flipped inside out. The problem? That setup is a magnet for dust and grease. Over time, dirt builds up on those little support rollers, making the movement feel sticky or inconsistent. You lose that smooth control and the trackball becomes way less predictable. To keep it working properly, you'll need to clean it regularly, and by that I mean every 2 or 3 days if you use it daily. So yes, you might get slightly better accuracy for certain tasks, but it comes at the cost of convenience and maintenance. So after all that, would I actually recommend anyone to use this device? Definitely not. Not for daily use and certainly not for gaming. The truth is, this trackball really only solves one problem: space. Like I mentioned earlier, it's not the most ergonomic option out there, and when it comes to precision and speed, I don't think it has any real advantage over a traditional mouse, especially not compared to a modern gaming mouse with high polling rates and DPI. Those are simply going to feel much better and more responsive. For me personally, I have no issue living with this thing. In fact, it's kind of forced me to rely more on keyboard shortcuts in the software I use, which isn't a bad habit to pick up. And at the end of the day, this trackball is good enough for what I do, so I don't see myself switching back to a regular mouse anytime soon. But if you're using a regular mouse right now, don't even think about switching. That's all for today's video. If you're enjoying this type of content, please like and subscribe so you don't miss the future updates. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.